There's so much coming out right now on Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what he knew about Epstein and when he knew it. And a lot of the suspicion that the American people are feeling right now is coming from Donald Trump himself and some of the recent comments he made. Like, for example, when he recently said on Air Force One that Virginia Giuffre, one of the most well known Epstein victims, was stolen from Mara Lago by Epstein, and then she was, of course, subsequently sex trafficked by Epstein. This is the first time that Donald Trump has ever acknowledged this happening on record. Previously, he's just kind of denied it outright. And so naturally, a lot of questions are being raised about what Trump knew, when he knew it, because he just keeps getting the timeline wrong. And so CNN just published this explosive article kind of summarizing everything we know about Trump, and they make the case that it's likely Trump knew about what Epstein was doing at the time that Giuffre was taken from Mar-a-Lago. So I want to break down this article with you and these explosive revelations that they are reigniting that have already been published but didn't get the attention that they deserve. But before I do that, I want you to hear directly from the family of Virginia Giuffre and their response to Donald Trump's comment that Virginia was stolen from Mar-a-Lago. Have a look, and then we'll break down that article.
Um, she wasn't stolen. Uh, she was preyed upon at his property, at President Trump's property. And I think it's very important that we don't treat it like stolen. Seems very impersonal. It feels very much like an object. And these survivors are not objects. Women are not objects. What goes through my mind is that it's time to protect survivors, and it's time to protect the young women and our future generation of young women. So no, she wasn't stolen. She was preyed upon. And it certainly makes you kind of ask the question, how much he knew during that time, right? Even a couple of years later, even after he, I believe he had stated something along the lines of cutting off communication or kicking him out. He described Jeffrey Epstein as somebody who really enjoyed being around young women. And so she was preyed upon. She wasn't stolen. That's a predator that came and took her and did absolutely horrible things to her and so many other women out there.
You can just see the pain that this family still feels, even after all these years later. They still feel this very deeply. And Trump commenting on Virginia, their sister, their relative, and calling her essentially an object, saying she was stolen, like a vase being stolen out of a museum, is just so disgusting. So I want to get into this article with you now about what Trump knew about Virginia Giuffre and when. And there's some pretty explosive things in here that, as I mentioned, are just not getting the attention they deserve. Let's start here with Trump's reported conversations about Epstein and young women. Now, and they write, and while the 2002 Trump quote that Giuffre's family cited about Epstein and women on the younger side is the most oft-cited one, it's not the only piece of evidence that Trump might have encountered red flags about Epstein. A Florida-based businessman told the New York Times in a 2019 interview that he raised concerns about Epstein's conduct ahead of a 1992 Calendar Girl event, saying, quote, "I said, look, Donald, I know Jeff really well. I can't have him going after younger girls," the businessman, George Harani, said. The first Trump White House did not comment on that report. Here's another one. Longtime Trump advisor Roger Stone wrote in his 2016 book about a scene in which Trump talked about how Epstein's, quote, "swimming pool was full of beautiful young girls. How nice, I thought," Trump said, according to Stone. He let the neighborhood kids use his pool. What? I mean, that quote is gross enough to send shivers down your spine. I'm certainly feeling that right now. Let's just break this down really quickly. Let's start with the Roger Stone thing. So, according to Roger Stone, who again, no liberal, this is a longtime Trump advisor, still works in MAGA politics, by his own admission, Trump acknowledged that Epstein had his swimming pool full of young girls, the neighborhood kids, and not only that not only was Epstein hanging out with young girls and neighborhood kids who were swimming in his pool, but Donald Trump also described those young kids, those neighborhood kids, as beautiful young girls. What? I mean, that is so gross, so insane. And it seems like Donald Trump was kind of dabbling in endorsing what Epstein was doing, or at least it seems like there is some knowledge there of what Epstein was doing. He's acknowledging that neighborhood kids were hanging out at his house. But then here's another one that's really concerning. If this businessman, George Harani, knew about what Epstein was doing, so much so that he even warned Donald Trump, then how can Trump possibly claim that he had no idea? According to lawyers who represented Epstein victims, Epstein would bring in around 3 young girls into his house per day to commit crimes to. And anybody that was socializing with Epstein at the time would have seen that and naturally raised concerns, been alarmed because this grown-ass man is hanging out with little girls. If George Harani, this businessman, knew, how did Donald Trump possibly not? These are just 2 pieces of evidence against Donald Trump in the sense that, he claims he didn't know, but I think these speak a different story. And his quote saying that Epstein liked women on the younger side, these are only a few pieces of evidence. I mean, there's more. And here's another key part of this story, which Giuffre's family was asking in that CNN interview tonight. Did Donald Trump know what Epstein recruited her for? Another key question is about the job that Giuffre was ostensibly poached for. Did Donald Trump know that Epstein recruited her to become a masseuse? In 2019 comments to the Washington Post, former Trump aide Sam Nunberg described asking Trump about his ties to Epstein as Trump was gearing up for his 2016 presidential campaign. Nunberg said that Trump had told him he had objected to Epstein recruiting a young woman who worked at Mara Lago to give Epstein massages, a description that sounds very similar to Giuffre's situation. He's a real creep. I banned him, Nunberg said Trump told him. Nunberg told CNN in an email Thursday that he didn't know whether Trump was referring to Giuffre specifically. Quote, I do not recall any name being mentioned, nor would it have been a concern vis-a-vis any discussion with Trump, as he was not involved in any way with the Giuffre lawsuit, which was active at the time. To the extent Trump knew Epstein recruited Giuffre for massages, that would be problematic. Giuffre, after all, wasn't just a minor at the time. She also wasn't even a masseuse. She served as an attendant in the Mar-a-Lago spa, according to her testimony. Her legal team also noted she wasn't even qualified for a massage license under Florida law, which required one to be 18 years old or have a high school diploma or equivalent, all of which raises the prospect that Trump might have been aware of not just an employee being poached, but a minor employee being poached for a specific type of job that did not seem appropriate for her. Epstein was taking a minor who could not have possibly had a masseuse license, who was working at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago, and Trump has acknowledged this to be his masseuse. And Donald Trump is, again, pleading ignorance. He's saying he had no idea this is happening, except he's now acknowledging that it's happening. It's all very strange how it all comes together in the timeline. And beyond that, there are the reported conversations about Epstein and young females that bookend all of this. Harani's account indicates he raised concerns about Epstein going after young girls 8 years before the Giuffre episode. If Harani's account is correct, Trump would have seemingly have had reason to be suspicious about Epstein recruiting a minor Mar-a-Lago employee in 2000, whether for massages or anything else. And Trump would go on 2 years after he suggests he was alienated by this episode to praise Epstein as a terrific guy and cite how Epstein likes women on the younger side. Trump, the White House, and Nunberg have also repeatedly referenced the idea that Trump fell out with Epstein because he learned he was a creep. That includes Caroline Leavitt, who said something similar, but there's no real clarity on what creep refers to. And Trump on Tuesday balked at providing clarity on that point. When asked by a reporter what he meant by creep, he attacked the news outlet, saying, NBC is fake news. I don't care. It's one of the worst. Somewhat similarly, when Trump was asked after Epstein's 2019 arrest about the reason the two of them had a falling out, he avoided a direct answer. The reason doesn't make any difference, frankly, Trump said at the time. None of it is a smoking gun, but the timeline and the president's slow disclosures certainly suggest the questions about what he knew and when are legitimate and relevant, and it doesn't seem as though those questions are going away now that those close to Epstein's victims oppressing them. So given all of this, it's just incredibly strange. There are weird connections between Trump and Epstein, which are now on full display. And when you factor in everything, Trump's birthday card to Epstein in 2003, photos of and videos of them partying together, not only in the 1990s, but also the 2000s, Trump's comment in 2002 that Epstein likes women on the younger side, and everything we just broke down in the article, it almost seemingly implies, if not confirms, that Donald Trump knew more about Epstein than he has previously let on, and that he's telling the American people right now. So really, really just a lot of crazy things coming out about Donald Trump and his relationship to Epstein. I will leave the video there. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. It goes an incredibly long way. Drop a like on the video, comment, let me know what you think about this story. And as I always say, I greatly appreciate you, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.